Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I am doing this piece which is part of my juxtaposition series, and this one is called the Shoemaker. Now, like some of my other juxtaposition pieces, I started off with gray tone paper, and then I'm just adding light layers of gouache that has been well diluted with water just to kind of lay out the structure of where everything is. I'm using a light apricot with plenty of water, and here I'm just using a small soy sauce dish to kind of mix my paint. The reason I use a smaller dish is one, it's like conveniently sits on my art paper without kind of taking up too much room. I love to have it in my hand sometimes, and I can just move it around with me or with my left hand while I paint. The other thing I really love about it is that for me, I do my gouache paintings in several sittings, so it's really helpful that I don't really squeeze as much paint out each time, in which case I don't need a giant dish for that purpose. So that's why I rather use a smaller dish, and also like how light this dish is. So if I have to carry my left hand while I paint my right, it's perfect size. Kind of sits right nicely on my palm. So here I'm using some cobalt blue along with some umber brown colors and mixing it to get this kind of darker shade. I dilute it with a little bit of water just so I can start outlining where the characters will be. So the theme of this piece is called the Shoemaker, and there's really two central characters in this piece. I want to have the idea of like having a child that's on a sewing machine making the shoe, and another child sitting on the floor that is wearing the shoe. And I hope that this will be an insightful piece, so that each time I look at it, I think about where things come from that I'm using, that I'm wearing from day to day, where it comes from. If I think sometimes when we don't see it, it doesn't affect us as much. For example, thinking about how our branded shoes, where are they made, who made them, how are they paid, are they paid equitably? These are things that, like, I think when we don't think about it, it doesn't bother us, but if you see it, you hear about it, then you tend to take more action. And at the same time, I also think it's a great reminder, I think, for my children, if they see a piece like this, to think about how they should treasure and value the things that they have and where they come from, and the work and craftsmanship that is put into it. So here I'm drawing a child, and I want the two child to be similar in age, so that it's like a good fair comparison between left and right. A child who is similar in age where they're not at a position or a time or a place to ask for a brand new pair of shoes, or wanting like brand new jacket or winter jacket or shoes or coats or anything or toys of that sort. Their priority is bringing maybe food, maybe securing a home or shelter, in which case they have to resort to maybe making shoes, which their time could have been spent doing other things like going to school or playing with friends, but instead their childhood is spent kind of learning the tough roads of something. I think in our kind of Western idea is that something that is for children, they should be indulging in their childhood and like savoring the innocence and like just being totally carefree. But I know that this is not the reality for a lot of children in our world. So here I have the child sitting down and using a sewing machine, and I'm sure like half the children probably in in Canada at least probably don't have any experience of sewing machine and may never do. I know they still teach it in home ec class back in the day when I was in high school, but I don't know if it's mandatory anymore. So anyways, so this child is making a pair of shoes on a sewing machine, while I have another child, which is I think more relatable to my children, that they will go to a shoe store, they will shop for a pair of shoes, they will fit for their pair of shoes, and then if it fits well, we purchase it with money, and then they get to enjoy it. And I want my children and anybody, the audience who are looking at this picture, to acknowledge the background of how things come to be and appreciate, and just give us so much more appreciation for what we have. I'm not very good with my words, so you can see that I'm stumbling a little bit. I'm trying really hard, but I do find that like it's very important to give a voice to each of my art pieces, because the story behind the piece and the process behind it is just as important as the finished product. So that's why I started the YouTube channel, and I started kind of narrating each of my pieces, why I do it, what my thought process behind it is, and then hopefully convey that story and hope be more relatable for those of you who are looking at my pieces. It is a bit of a stretch for me to kind of do pieces like these, because it takes more effort, more thought, and it's not as comfortable, I would say, compared to, let's say, if I do fan art, do cartoony pieces, scenic things. Like, it's not as comfortable because it requires me to go to places that I'm normally maybe not as comfortable thinking about or painting, or scenes or objects that I'm not as familiar with. I really love like abstract and forest and dreamy scenes, but like I think art should convey a message at the same time, and sometimes it's good to use different mediums and different types of styles to convey that message in a better way. I chose a little bit more of a gray tone, kind of like a dimmer, duller, cooler color scheme, because I feel like this is more of a serious matter. And to be honest, like these pieces really inspired by one of the artists like Banksy, how he does graffiti art and the messages that they convey. The style that Banksy comes from is what inspired these types of juxtaposition pieces that I'm doing. I feel very proud of these pieces, and I'm very excited to be able to narrate and also paint these pieces. So I hope you're enjoying this narrated video as well. And if you don't, feel free to comment below. I might get a little offended, but that's okay. I think it's important to get feedback if this is the type of videos that you would like to see, or would you just like to have some pleasant music and just watch me paint, which is perfectly fine as well. At this point in the piece, I would say I spend probably around 2 hours, 3 hours on it. It's not all in one sitting, because for gouache I have to give it time for it to dry, and then before I add on the next layer. So you can see I try to not use too much water, or else the paper will buckle up. When I finish with the gouache pieces and everything has dried, I use oil pencils to kind of add details and highlights. I love that about gouache, that you can use other multimedias, and add highlights on top of it. And it just comes up really well. I don't feel like this piece needs like a lot of pop of color, but I do think it needs some pop of color to kind of let the audience see where to focus on in the piece and what is the highlight, which incidentally is not the children themselves, but the pair of shoes that connect them. It could be a child on the polar opposite of the world who's making a pair of shoes for this child that they're never going to meet, never going to talk to, never going to have a conversation with. That will be reaping the benefits of them making this pair of shoes. So here I'm adding on some red gouache on top of that to kind of highlight the red pair of shoes. And then the child sitting will be wearing another red pair of shoes. I think after drawing this piece, it makes me think about how I handle my shoes, if I handle it with care. Nowadays, you don't see too many. Is it cobbler? Like people who mend shoes around anymore. I wonder if people just get brand new shoes when they wear out. I have recently gone to a cobbler to fix kind of bottom of one of my leather shoes, and it kind of breathes new life into the piece. And I am surprised that I don't go more often to kind of fix up my shoes, because like there's often a lot of life left, and there are ways to fix it and mend it rather than getting a brand new pair. Well, I think I'm about to wrap up for this piece. Thank you so much for joining me on this piece called The Shoemaker, part of the Juxtaposition series. I really enjoy talking about it, and I hope my message kind of conveys through and you can see where I'm coming from. But yeah, I guess I'll see you next time in another video. And if you like these type of video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. It really help a lot. Well, that's it for now. Stay safe and stay creative, everyone. Bye for now.